Hey guys, it's me, Raina from Snowworks Crochet. In today's video, I want to review the new Bernat all-in-one blanket yarn. I actually made a pre-order for this yarn, back in December, but I just got back to Pittsburgh yesterday, so the first thing I want to do is review my yarn. I am a little bit crazy. I ordered one of every color and there's 5 in total, but I got sent 6 for some reason. I don't know, every time I order from the Yarnspirations website, they always seem to give me 1 extra than what I initially ordered, which, I mean, I guess that works, but I don't know what I'm gonna do with all this. But we have, 5 different colors. There's this one called Asphalt, Seaside Shine, Fruit Juice, Retro Pop, and Throwback. Again, for some reason they sent me 2 of the Seaside color, so I'm going to do my initial test and review with this color since I have more of it. Each ball has 8.5 ounces or 240 grams of this blanket yarn. It is 178 yards, 163 meters. And according to this, one of these makes 4 granny squares, which I'm not gonna lie, seems not like a lot. The original Red Heart all-in-one granny square makes 14 granny squares, the Flower Power makes 12 granny squares, so one of these making just 4 seems kind of like a ripoff in my opinion, but also it's blanket yarn. I don't know what. I don't normally use blanket yarn, so who knows? Actually, it gives you a little graphic on the back of how many squares it'll take to make both a baby blanket and a regular blanket. This one says that you need 3 balls to make a baby blanket and 5 to make a not baby blanket. It is machine washable and dryable, which is good. We like that. And this is a weight 6, super bulky, and the prescribed hook size is an 8mm. With the original Red Heart all-in-one granny square, I actually had to size up my hook from the prescribed 5.5 to a 6.5 because I tend to crochet very tight. I'm curious what my tension will look like using blanket yarn. I will try the 8mm crochet hook and see what that gives me. Just for reference, for me as a crocheter, I tend to crochet tight. I don't like working with bulky weight yarns. I actually prefer to work with thinner yarns than bulkier weight yarns. Let's try this out. Let me pull up the instructions on this label. I will say one benefit to this already is that the instructions on the label are a bigger font size than the Red Heart yarn because, oh man, I'm young. I have young eyes, but that font on the other label was tiny. This is actually readable. So looking at these instructions, it's very similar to the Red Heart all-in-one granny square yarn instructions, but I don't follow those instructions. So let's work this how I would work it. I use a magic ring, a stacked single crochet, and chain 2 at the corners and no chain in between the spaces. First opinions, I have a feeling I'm going to absolutely hate this. Not because of the yarn itself, but because I hate blanket yarn so much. But let me do my stacked single. It's definitely harder to do a stacked single here. What is this? Okay, so guys, this is the color change right here. I hate this. Okay, here's technically my first row using an 8mm. Oh, I have a feeling that, maybe I should have seen this coming, but I don't think I can do a magic ring with this because it's blanket yarn, and because it's blanket yarn, I don't think magic rings are as easy with blanket yarn. So I think I'm gonna have to do this chain 4 slip stitch method for these, which I kind of hate, not gonna lie. I don't think it's pretty. Let me try that method again. Also, I'm going as loose as I can. I can definitely tell you the problems I'm having with this yarn are more related to the fact that I'm not used to blanket yarn than like the yarn itself, and which I will fully acknowledge and accept. Ooh, that I hate that color change. Okay. I have the first round down. It's right at the color change. Again, I should have known this. This was my bad. I cannot emphasize to you enough that I do not like blanket yarn, so I do not normally work with it. I'm low-key regretting buying this. I think it might be a bit too late for me to get a refund on returning this. So I'll have to donate it or something. But let me finish making the square. Second row down. So far, I've been able to do this all kind of in one go. I'm really not the biggest fan of how the color changes are done with this yarn. But, I mean, I guess if you think about it and how ends are woven in, it's not the worst. I should have realized how big this thing is. Considering it's like super bulky yarn, but it is. This thing is giant. What is nice is that I'm able to get away with using my normal method of granny squares, which is by using the stacked single crochet. And I didn't have to put the extra chain spaces in between, which is nice, which makes it a little bit tighter. I have loosened up my tension a lot, so I've been pretty successful in getting to the color changes on this yarn, but because I've loosened up my tension so much, like I'm starting to notice a lot of like really loose bits right here. I know this is a pretty common blanket yarn thing, and I'm not used to working with blanket yarn, but it is interesting being able to work this square actually using the prescribed hook size. Like the other all-in-one granny square, it's definitely a looser granny square. I've tightened it up a little bit by not doing the chain in between each space and by doing 2 chains in the corner instead of 3. And also, I have been starting every single one of these with a stacked single crochet instead of a chain 3. And I think that has helped me with the yarn usage at least. It's still very loose, you know? Very loose. And again, I should have expected this thing to be absolutely giant. For reference, this is the all-in-one granny square. I did it in this pattern because I could. This is row 3. This is the regular all-in-one granny square. See the size difference? And I have 2 more colors to go for this. I believe on the label it says that each square is like 10.5 inches. So that's huge. This is my first one where I have to loosen up my stitches, so let me go do that. What is nice is because I crocheted pretty loose, I don't have too many issues with the fluffing of it, but at the same time, it's blanket yarn. So if you crochet tighter, it might fluff up everywhere and cause issues. Let me redo this again. You know what? Close enough. I don't care. I've given up. So now I'm on the last row, and according to this, you're supposed to have a 42-inch tail for the last color, which is quite a bit, actually. So it sounds like that you are supposed to have a long tail for this for you to weave in your ends and stitch things together, which, I do like, and probably is why you only get 4 granny squares out of this. So let me finish this last row and I'll show you the end result. Okay, so I just finished my granny square. I'm gonna cut off this row right here. It's surprisingly, I will say, it's a little bit flaky, but not that much flaky compared to some other blanket yarns I've used in the past. This is the dent that one granny square made. The tail left is not nearly as long as the flower power yarn, which is nice because that tail is annoyingly long. We have completed our blanket square. This thing is huge, and I see why that, 4 squares is not the end of the world. I will admit, when I read the label and saw there were only 4 squares on this label, like in each cake, I felt a little bit ripped off, especially since one of these is about $13.99 and I paid full price for it because I ordered it from the Yarn Inspirations website. Once it hits stores, like if it's in Joann's or Michael's or whatever, it might be cheaper because some of those retailers have better deals compared to like if you were to just buy it from the Yarn Inspirations website. But overall, it is. So I will say my primary issues with this yarn are not necessarily the fault of this yarn. It's mainly related to the fact that I do not use blanket yarn very much. Starting out was kind of difficult because I couldn't use my magic ring. I had to do the chain 4 slip stitch method, and I don't like doing that. Also, like there's some like blanket warming on here, and that's because I had to go extra loose on the stitches for this blanket yarn. I was also able to use the prescribed hook by going extra. I didn't have to increase my hook size, which is nice. I think because I am pretty used to the Red Heart all-in-one granny square yarn, like, you know, the issues most people would have with this are just going to be related to the all-in-one yarns in general. You have to have consistent tension in order to use this, and you have to play around with it. Because I'm used to the all-in-one yarns overall, I didn't have too many issues with the color changes, but if you are not used to that, that will pose a problem. I would say my primary complaint related specifically to this yarn, that isn't the fact that it's blanket yarn, is actually this. This is my biggest complaint. I hate this. This is ugly. I conceptually understand that with blanket yarn, it's not easy to do faded color changes like that. I really hate the fact that instead of dyeing the yarn, they chose to just stitch different colors of yarn together. I do not like that. That is my biggest complaint, especially on my color changes here. You can kind of see, I mean, to some extent, it is a little bit more subtle with the color changes, but those color changes on this blanket yarn are super ugly. Again, I am a blanket yarn hater, so I probably will never buy this again. If you are a blanket yarn lover and you also love making granny squares with blanket yarn, this is a pretty solid option. I will say the one thing that's a little bit disappointing is that you are kind of limited to only making blankets with this yarn specifically. To be fair, I don't know. Maybe I can try making the sunflower pattern with this, but I don't know if you can make anything else other than blankets with this yarn because this is too big and too thick for a scarf, and you can't really do much amigurumi unless if you just don't make granny squares. But if that's the case, why use this yarn? You can use literally anything else. This yarn for blanket yarn is a little limiting compared to the original all-in-one granny square yarn, which is a worsted weight. And because it's a worsted weight yarn, there are so many more granny square projects you can make with this. Whereas this granny square is huge, okay? What are you making with this? I've seen people make those little like pouches, but you're not making a pouch with this. Why would you make a pouch with this? Why would you make a bag with this? You're limited in the uses you can do with this product in general. I don't know, I've been rambling for too long. I think overall the yarn is fine. A little pricey for what it is. My major complaint is the color change and kind of the lack of options of what you could do with the yarn. But other than that, I think it's fine. I will say the negative side of this yarn is that you can only make 4 granny squares. However, because I don't like blanket yarn and I probably will not buy this again, I only have to make 4 granny squares. Depends on who you're talking to, right? Overall, I do think if you love blanket yarn, you should check out this yarn. If you were a blanket yarn hater like me, I would probably not recommend buying it. that is my video. That is my review. I hope this might have helped somebody. It's definitely not a sponsored review. With that, I will see you again next time. Bye!